Hello everyone, and welcome to this new video in the React tutorial series. Today we will be creating a weather app. So this project will teach us about fetching the data from external APIs and managing the state with asynchronous data and updating our UI based on the user interactions. So this would, offer a perfect deep dive into the React world for beginners. So building upon the basics that we established with the prior two videos, I think this would allow us to create a much fancier app because this involves fetching data from an external API and manipulating and trying to clean the data. So yeah, let's proceed. So I'll give you a basic overview of the weather app. So this weather application will allow the users to search for a particular city and display the current weather and similar details. And we'll cover the setting up of the basic project, fetching the data, displaying the data, and handling the user input. So for this particular application, I would suggest, before you even start, to go to this particular website called openweathermap.org. So this is very important. It provides a free API, to fetch the weather data, and it's pretty user friendly. So I would suggest you to first create your account with this website. Uh, yeah, so I've already created my account here, and let's go to the API section. So we have these API calls, the different APIs, to get the current weather data, the forecast for the 4 days, forecast for 16 days, and so on. So it has a really great collection of APIs that you can use and utilize for your application, and depending on your use case. So for our use case, so let's go to the account, and here these are the API keys which we will be using to fetch the data and to validate the data, the API call. So I will be using these keys, and don't worry, I will disable the keys after this video. Yeah. So once you've set up your account here, and you've created your keys, so by default you will be given a particular key, the API key, which you can use. So I've created another one with the name of weather app to use it in my application. So yeah. So after you've done that, we can go ahead and start creating the application. So let's set up the project. And in this project, I'll be using Axios to fetch the data. So there's a very particular reason I'll be using Axios because Axios is a very popular tool, to fetch the data, external data, and it is much more efficient compared to the native fetch API. So because it simplifies the requests and handles the responses in a much more efficient way, and also there are many advantages of Axios over Fetch, which kind of includes JSON data transformation. So and also it has simpler syntax for error handling, and you also have the ability to cancel the requests after it's made. So it's also much more widely supported across the browsers, and that's one of the reasons why it's pretty much reliable for any web project. So we will be going ahead with Axios. It's a very powerful HTTP client. So let's go ahead and set up the project. So like as always, let's set up the project. Okay, let me go to my directory first. Documents. Okay, I have the React projects, and this. Let me go to cd my app. Okay, let's check all the files. Okay, we are in this directory. So let's create the project npx create React app weather app. So yeah, so all the changes, so while this is being created, so what we'll be going to do is that we'll create a simple React application in the app.js file, and we'll also be using uh, a use state, so for state management, and an Axios for making the API requests. So let's go to the folder. Now we're inside the folder. Let's start working on it. Let's go to the source, app.js. So yeah, before we start, let's just start the project so that we know what we are working on. And okay, it's running. Cool. I'll just delete all of the unnecessary code. Yeah. So first things first, let's import React, and we'll be using useState from React. Like I previously mentioned, it's always better to write the code rather than uh, taking the help of Copilot. Of course, Copilot helps in building the project much faster, but as it's much better to practice the code, and it improves the coding ability. So it's better that you write the whole all the whole entire code by yourself. So yeah, let's install the package npm at the Axios npm I Axios. So this would install the Axios package, which we can import into our file Axios from Axios. So now what we can do is start creating the project. So first things first, let's create an input field first, and where the users can type the name of the city, and we also use some sort of a control component for this input. So React can control that particular value, and we'll update the query, the state, which would be the query. It could be updated on every keystroke that that we make, so as to reflect the inputs value. Um, yeah, so let's start with that. So so it has to return a div. Let's always have div. It will be within the div, and let's let's give a heading first. It has weather application. Yep. And input would be type text. Let's have a placeholder which would tell the user to enter uh, a city name. The value you can have it as the query, which would be sent to the API. And on change uh, event, what we would do is, so as we're using state management, so for every query there would be set query, wherein like I mentioned, that every keystroke that we make, the change on the change of keystroke, we'll be updating the query parameter. So we can update it through set query. I'll be showing you the how I'm setting up the query and set query. Just a moment. Value, and on key down we can call a function. search. I'll be creating the function. In the meanwhile, let's compute this. Okay. Oh, that's fine. This is expected. So because we haven't clearly defined query, set query, and search, but for our simplicity's sake, let's set it up. Query, set query, use state, and let's create a function. In fact, I know what, I'll take a const search, but yeah. So before that, let's also create another state for weather, because that's the data that we'll be getting, and all the data that we get from the API would be stored inside this particular weather, and we can keep on updating the weather using set weather. And as it's a JSON object, we'll enclose it within parentheses. Cool. Now let's create our search function. So in the search function, it would be an asynchronous event. Yeah, it would be an asynchronous event because you are fetching data from an API, so it would always be an asynchronous event. If event dot key. So this means that uh, so event dot key is enter. So what does this mean? So after you enter a particular city's name and you press the enter key, the following action is what uh, would happen. So what would happen? Yes, it would fire up, or it would try sending uh, the API, try sending the request, uh, and then it would wait for a response from that. Const response equals to wait Axios. So for this, we are going to use Axios dot get. It's a get call that we're making. So oh, and before we do that, so to simplify our call, our API call, our request, we can define the base URL, the URL that we would be using as, okay, GitHub Copilot, completes this, auto completes this code. But what we can do is that, we can go to the guide, or actually the API. You can go down and you can select this current weather data here, API doc, and you can just scroll down, 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 down. I think. mm, So you have to actually search for the one with wherein the query takes in the name of the city, like this one. So all we can do is we can just copy this particular code and paste it. Let's enclose it within. Yes. Okay. What we can do is we can just remove this part. That we will be sending it inside the request. So this is the base URL, and also let's have the API key. The API key. So like I showed, after we set up our account, we can just go to the account And in the API keys, we can just choose this particular key or any key. By default, you'll get one key and you can use that as well. But I've created created a key for this particular application, so I'll go ahead and use that. And yeah, good. Now, here in axios.get, well, the request that we're going to send, I'll send the base URL and the parameters. So, so what are the parameters? So the parameters are the query. As you can see, it's pretty simple. I'll just show you how I'm getting all of this. Let's go to the API. Let's go down, API doc. So here you see the parameters. So these are the parameters that I will be using. So let's use the parameters. Q, it would be query, which is the city that I would enter in the input box. The units. So units, it would be metric. I believe GitHub Copilot knows everything. Pretty evident here. And the app ID. Uh, yeah, app ID would be the API key. Perfect. After this, you know what we can do? Set weather. So we're gonna get all the data as a response, and we're going to set the state to the response that we get after the API call. Yes. And let's set the query to empty. Now why are we doing this is because so now we are done. We are done with this particular API call. We entered the name of a city and we got the data. But if we have to make another API call or to get the data of another city, we'll have to empty the field. We have to empty the input field. So for that, we're gonna set the state, the query to an empty string, and yeah, now we'll have we're using try and catch. So let's catch an error if there is any. This is much better than it's a good practice to have try and catch. It's a good coding principle. The error that we get. Good. Okay. So right now we have created a basic search function, which takes in the event, uh, and once we've entered, we've just pushed the enter key. So what it's going to do, it's going to fire up a get call through Axios, and it'll take all these parameters, which is the query, the state, uh, uh, and the API key that we're providing here. So another thing that I want to point out is that usually API keys or any keys that you use for your applications should not be displayed on your main code on your code base. It should always be on .env files, and when they go into production, you're not actually dealing them. They are hidden. So this is a very bad practice. But just as an example, I'm just showing it to you that for now. Otherwise, all you can do is that you can just create a .env file in your folder, and then you can just store this API key in the .env file. You can extract it using process.env, and you can just get that the API key from there. So yeah. Right. So what we can do now is, okay, we're going to search a particular city. It's going to fire up the a get call, and we're going to get the response. Okay. Now, how do we display the response? Well, So the response is going to be like we saw, it's going to be a JSON object, right? So we have to, make sense of the data that we're getting, the JSON data, and let's give a nice structure to it so that it's good to display. So so how do we know that what's the structure of the data? So Open Weather Map has this example response from where you can actually see what the format of the response is going to be and how the responses are going, how the response what are the various parameters that are there in those in the response. So yeah, okay. I think I'm a little lost. Am I? Oh, okay. Okay, this is the API call that we're making, and the response data. Okay, all right. Okay, not this one because we're supposed to use the one where we get the basic data of the particular city. Just a second. The city. Ah, yeah, this is the one. Okay. So this is the JSON format of the API response fields. So what we're going to get is that we're going to get the coordinates, uh, the weather, uh, and we're going to get the main temperature, visibility, wind, rain, snow, the country, and the name of the city that we've used. So let's make it basic. And you know what? We're going to just display the name of the city, the country, and also the temperature. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what we can just show. Weather dot main and just using this weather dot main. Okay, we can do this. Let's create a div here. I need a closing tag. And let's create a p tag. In fact, h2 tag. Let's do no. We can use tag weather dot name, comma weather dot sys dot country. Okay, all of these parameters are all available here. Sys dot country, it's all here that you can use. So it's pretty simple. And let's display the temperature. What I'll do, I'll do round. I'll round it up. Math dot round dot main dot temperature degrees centigrades. And Perfect. I think we've got the whole thing set up. Uh, all we have to do is just try to fire it up and see how it works. Right. So, so once we have the weather data, so displaying it is pretty much straightforward. So we check here if the weather.main exists, and to confirm that we have the data, then render the city name, temperature, and the weather condition, all available here. Yeah. So let's try Boston. I'm in Boston. So let's try Boston. Well, it works. Perfect. So it shows you the city, the country, like we mentioned, and it rounds up the temperature to the nearest value, integer value, which is 14 degrees, and it feels like, I mean, well, it has clouds. It's cloudy. And if I just look out of my window, well, it is cloudy. That's nice. Pretty much great. Open weather maps, good job. It's a very a great tool, a great website, which allows us to play around with their APIs. And yeah, there's so many other APIs that you can tinker around with and play around with. And not just that, we have so many other parameters that you can just show. And another good thing is that you can add styling. You can use CSS stylings to make it more visually appealing. So, for example, there's so many possibilities here. So, it means that when I just press when I just enter Boston, something like a Boston a picture of an image of Boston can be shown here on the app. And if it feels like, I mean, the current temperature is like 14 degrees, you can just show it having a pleasant atmosphere and all. So it's sky is the limit if you think of making it visually appealing. So yeah, so this is pretty much a weather application, a pretty basic weather application using Axios, a very powerful tool to fetch APIs data. And yeah, that's pretty much the basics in this third tutorial video in the React series. So yes, and to just recap on the whole project on what's happening. So first, we are giving an input parameter, which is the name of a city. So here I've entered Boston, and after that, the search function is triggered when the user presses the enter key, and we use Axios to make the GET request to the Open Weather Map API. So Axios automatically handles the JSON parsing, so we can directly work with the response.data here. And after we get it, we're going to set it to the weather. The state is going to change to the response that we get. And as it's going to be a JSON object, so we're going to have to parse it, format it and parse it in a way that is visually appealing. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. And like I was already mentioned, that API keys shouldn't be in the main code. So you should always be put them in a .env file. So that's another thing that you need to keep in mind. Uh, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So we built a weather app with React and Axios. We learned a little bit about state management, asynchronous API requests, conditional rendering, and that's pretty much it. And thanks.